Hi everybody, I'm just out here to get the hang of this marvellous new camera to see if I can get it to work. And anyway, it's the 8th of December and it's a sunny day and I'm out in the orchard. What I'm going to do today is just go for a walk, take a look at some of what's going on, do some thinking. Orchard walking is very important at any time of year. And it's easy to get stuck into a task, but it's very important to spend some time taking a look first. Here are some of the plums, and they're not in great shape. You can probably see we've got some fungus growing out of the side of this plum, which, believe it or not, is not a good sign. I've mentioned before that the plums here seem to grow extremely well for a few years, crop amazingly well, and then they just sort of die. Various fungal and other diseases just sort of kill the plums. We've planted some new plums. In fact, I'm just going to walk in the direction where they are. There were a few more plums here. There's one over there, that reasonably big tree. Between here and there, there were several other plums. They've all died. Some of these plums are dying. You need to know, woodpeckers have done some of this. You need to work out which plants do well for you here. This is why I quite often, we'll say to somebody, we'll say, well, what would be a good fruit tree to grow in Michigan or Florida? I say to them, look, ask me what would be a good fruit tree to grow in southern Hampshire, because that's where I live. Ask some people who live near what grows well for them. No shortcut to that. But the plums are so profitable for us that it's worth us planting some new ones. And I'm just going to show you some plums we planted reasonably far away from those bad ones. And these plums are mixed varieties, but some of them are one called blue tit. The reason we're planting blue tit plum is because it looked good on the the information we could get sounded good. Blackmore nurseries, nice tree, good quality tree. We planted just one of these. It was 5 years growing. Last year, not the year that's just gone, but in 2011, we had the first crop off of it. And we had 30 kilos of plums off one tree. We took them to market the following day, sold the lot at £3 per kilo. 90 kilos. Not profit, but income. Amazing. So even if these plums grow well for 5 years, crop for 5 years, and then die, it's still worth us doing it. And normally you'll do better than that. These have grown quite nicely. Here you see. That's a 2011 growth. Obviously that's back to where we planted it. That's the growth from the previous year. These are quite substantial trees. We planted them with a lot of care. Of course, last year it rained, this year that's gone, it's still 2011, it rained so much that things did grow quite well. This is growing as a sort of open-centred or semi-sort of open-centred bush. In the first year that you plant a new tree, you don't want to cut it about too much. I mean, like these lower branches, for example, we probably will eventually take these out, and when we do, being a plum, we'll cut them during a time of active growth, probably May or early June, and we'll cut these carefully and then we'll seal them. But we left them there because they've made a lot of growth. They've helped thicken the whole thing up. You might take this one out as well. But anyway, these are some of the new plums we planted. I'm just walking you around the orchard to give an idea what's going on. This is an area, you see it looks a bit sparse here. This is the poorest soil in the orchard. It's very thin. If you dig down, it's sandy. It doesn't support growth very well. We found that out the hard way. Okay. So we've removed most of the trees and we've replanted trees at considerably greater distances, and they'll get a lot more care and a bigger root run. But the soil just wasn't very fertile in that particular section. Down here, can't really film that way too much into the sun. Down here, you see where my shadow is, there was a row of trees, and where my shadow is now, there was another row of trees. Guess what? They were too close together, right? So here there was a row of Egremont russet, over there was a row of Ribston pippin. Here's a row of Ribston pippin, so we halved them. They should have been planted further apart. Now the trees are loving it. These have been very difficult to manage because they were too close together. Now they're very happy. They're allowed to spread and they made a lot of growth. And here you can see lots and lots of lovely fruit bud. And that's just last year's growth. Here's loads of fruit bud. And they're quite nicely spaced. I'm not going to throw my camera. I haven't got a hat on me. I'm not going to throw anything through there. Here, this is interesting. These were Bramleys. These were Bramleys that we could not make any money from. The Bramley is a heritage apple. It's a cooking apple. Somerset Red Streak. What I did, we couldn't make any money from them, and it wasn't worth us having them. Sawed back very hard, very radical, hard sawing back. Let it make some growth. We limited the number of shoots by cutting out what we wanted. Grafted some. And here's a graft mark there. That's another place, that's another graft there. And this is a cider apple variety called Somerset Red Streak. And we've done the same along here. There's a graft mark there. These are good old saddle graft mainly. I've done a few other forms of graft as well. Which graft you do depends on the relative diameters. So here's another. You can see two coming up there. That was a cleft graft. Another cleft. What I probably should do is cut one of these out. But I'm not going to actually do any cutting right now. I've got my secateurs with me. I'm doing an orchard walk. Some horse riders coming by. It's a Harry Masters jersey, an excellent apple. You see how well these have done. Again, we're sitting with these Bramleys, weren't making any money, no use to us really. Sawed it down, shoots up, graft on, and now look at it. This is going to be a tree that's going to do us well. By the way, I will be making a video soon about the cyanwood. I will be sending out cyanwood. As you can see, there's a really lovely load of cyanwood here from Harry Masters jersey. So that's one of the varieties I'm going to have lots of. Dabinet. Again, Dabinet and Harry Masters jersey are very good cider apples to grow. Because, well, they're good quality for juice, but also they're quite reliable croppers. They crop every year. Whereas many cider apples will only give you a crop every second year. Crop in even numbered years or odd numbered years. A lot of the best apples, like Tremlett's Bitter, for example, I just like that. It can't be bred out of them. Right. This, by the way, is the oldest section of the orchard. This we call Bunyards, named after George and Edward Bunyard. And this is our original orchard. We've changed it a lot. We take out trees that didn't work, replace them. Here's the plums. This is probably going to be a long video. Here's the little house in the orchard. Okay. I have a story. I've got a book somewhere. It's called A Book of Hampshire Privies. Stories about outdoor toilets, oddly enough. And there's a story. It was a lady who was visiting a home and went to use the outdoor toilet, and afterwards said, "Oh, sir, there was no lock on the door." And he said, "Oh, not to worry, madam. We've been using it for 20 years. We've never had a bucket of shit stolen yet." Anyway, here is the pear orchard, the new pear orchard. These put on a lot of growth this year. They didn't make any fruit. My goodness, that's grown very well. That's as high as I can reach. Goodness. Now these have got stakes, although I fear these stakes may have rotted to some extent. Whether they'll always be necessary, I don't know. But I'm growing these as pyramids. It's going to need some pruning. It's got a huge amount of strong upright growths. It's grown too high really for two reasons. One, because last year it rained all the time, and also because there was no fruit, so it grew ever so much. Some of the wood doesn't look very healthy either. I'm probably going to end up cutting these back reasonably hard. Where you've got far too many branches, growing up into each other, that's no good. I'm going to have to cut some of these out, and I'm probably going to have to do it with either a long handle, which is the highest I can reach, you see. I'll be very surprised if I'm going to be willing to go on a ladder. So at the moment I'm just walking and thinking. I've got to decide what I'm going to do. I don't really want these trees growing more than about 8 or 9 feet tall, so I may end up cutting them back. Anyway, here's the damson plums. These send a lot of these shoots up, and again there's no alternative but to getting down on your knees and cutting all of these out. A great nuisance. By the way, you could, if you wanted to, dig these shoots up with the roots and then plant them and then graft plums onto them if you wanted to. I don't want to, and I won't be. Here are the espaliers. These were not pruned this year. You can see here's the main trunk. Here are the branches, a little bit out of control, but not too badly. Here are the fruit buds, which is what you really want, and here we've got loads and loads and loads of I'll tell you what, I'm not going to do any more of that, just giving you an idea. Loads and loads and loads of new growth. Give you an idea of what might happen later. See this new growth? It's going to be tied in there. You got me? Now, if anyone wants to ask for more detail, by means do, but the point is, this is still an orchard walk. I'm having a look to see what's going on. Oh dear. Okay. This is the sort of thing that happens. Anyway, I'm not going to actually do all of the work now, but I'm just having a look and a think and working out what needs to be done. This needs to be tied down there. You see what I'm talking about? It needs to be done carefully. I'm going to bring that down, tie it in there, and then over the next year, this branch will grow to be like this one. Okay, with fruit buds on it. These buds are going to fruit next year, hopefully. Next year, this will produce buds and fruit the following year. And, it's gradually all filling out. I'm not going to do a lot. One reason I'm not going to do a lot of pruning now is because this is all good cyanwood. If anybody wants some cyanwood, this is a pear variety called Santa Claus, for example. At least I think it is, as best as I can remember. This is I can't remember what pear variety this is. I've got a feeling this is Josephine de Malines, but I'm not sure. That's a lovely bit of cyanwood there. If anyone wants, I think it's Josephine de Malines. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lovely bits of cyanwood. This, by the way, is a nuisance. This is the sort of thing you get in a bad year, bad weather year. You can see these are baby little pearlets. What happened, obviously, was we got some late blossom. You get that sometimes. You get inappropriate blossom developing, in sort of August or something, and fruits and gives you these, completely useless pears. Anyway, we didn't need the wasp traps this year. It's too wet for blooming wasps. Yeah, this got out of control completely. That's going to need some hard work with a saw. Right, I pruned the grapevines here, by the way. I think most of you probably didn't even know I had grapevines. Well, I do, and this is another example of what not to do. These, I haven't had a worthwhile cropper for these yet, but that's no surprise. It takes time. I forgot to label them, so I know that one of these is Gagarin Blue. There's a Russian grape, obviously. There's some Chardonnay in there somewhere. There's a Madeleine Sylvaner. There were 2 or 3 others I can't remember. But basically the idea of having a row of grapes is that in a 1 year in 5, when when you get perfect weather for it. I might get a gallon of wine off of that. But as I've said elsewhere, what's the point when, what's the point of struggling like mad to grow dodgy grape varieties which are highly unreliable in this country when you can grow fantastic cider apples. Okay, here's another young pear. This is a pear we planted last year, Winter Nellis. I misspelled, there's two L's there. And as you can see from what I said about the plum earlier, I didn't cut these lower branches off, and I'm going to leave them here for another year because they will produce leaf, the leaf will produce growth, and there's a nice pyramid. I'm not probably going to prune that this year. I might just take these lowest 2 or 3 off, perhaps. But again, I'll show you when I prune that. Here's another pear, it's a bit older. And this, I can hardly resist touching this, but this has got too much, it's got much too much fruit spurs on it. I'll come back and prune each one of these individually properly in short videos. Oh, by the way, isn't it great with walking? Yeah, strongly recommend not breaking your Achilles tendon. This injury has cost me at least £4,000 plus much pain. Here is one of the seedling pear rootstocks, and here is a whole sack of stuff out of a horse's bottom, which I picked up from the side of the road. Not personally, but a lady put it in bags. So I'm growing this up tall and strong, and I'm going to graft it there. This, by the way, is an ash tree. That's another issue. We've got ash disease now facing us because the people who run this country somehow thought it was expedient to import large numbers of ash trees, even though they grow very readily in this country, and it was known to be a fatal disease in Europe. Don't blame me, I voted for the UK Independence Party. This area is going to be converted over to an orchard of widely spaced big Perry pear trees. And as somebody rightly pointed out, I need to improve my health so that I'll live long enough to see them fruit. But yeah, this is a variety called Brandy. If anybody wants a bit of Perry pear called Brandy, I won't be cutting a lot of this off, but there will be a little bit of Perry pear Brandy. If you graft it onto Quince A and grow it as pyramids or bushes, you'll get fruit sooner. It's completely inedible. You cannot make good perry out of eating pears, and you cannot eat Perry pears. This is another older Perry pear. This is called Winnell's Longdon, and this is now that's my height. So this is now about 8.5 feet tall. Made some nice growth. It's got some buds on it. It may actually have a bit of fruit on it next year. This area looks a mess, and it is. It should have been scythed last year. I was too busy being disabled and going to work and finishing my novel, which, by the way, I've just finished. I will be publishing, not on Kindle, possibly later today. Yeah, this is another Perry pear, one called Blakeney Red. Again, there's some lovely cyan wood there. And some fruit bud. Yeah, it's got fruit bud on it. And again, this is about 8 feet tall. These trees, the aim of these trees is that they will eventually be, I mustn't fall over here. These trees will eventually, I hope, be 40 or 50 feet tall and yield each year maybe 150, 200 kilos of fruit per tree, so that we will get, half a barrel of perry from each of these trees. And eventually, long after my natural lifespan would have been over, in other words, 60, 70, 100 years from now, they will grow into very, very beautiful tall trees. And I'll show you some big Perry pears I've got in the copse that are 20 years old, which make really, really very good top of the range knife handles. Over here we've got some Quince. This is Quince here. So there's 2 quinces with orange staining on them, and it was a bad idea to have planted them here. They don't get enough light. You can see there's the sun over there These haven't got enough light. This is the oval spinney here, which was planted with visual shelter, which it does admirably. But these, I'm going to try, persuade Julia, we'll have to do it together, she's not very keen, but I am, try and dig these up and move them, and just as a demonstration about the possibilities of digging up and moving a very large tree that's a number of years old. We've just planted some new quince trees. I want more quince. These trees can be very productive. Not many people know what to do with quince, but those who do know it's lovely, lovely, lovely stuff. This is a variety called Serbian Gold, which I've not come across. I bought these, I forget where I got them online. Very expensive, £37 each, as I recall, which frankly is extremely dear. So I haven't pruned them yet. Some of this wood needs to come out. I'll be grafting some of these onto some Quince A rootstocks. Like this, for example. This is a Quince A rootstock. I grafted it, but the graft did not succeed, and so this is growing away as a rootstock. This I plan to graft either to Pear or to Quince. Anyway, this is a dwarf cherry. I had a few fruits on it last year, but it didn't ripen. You can rely on the fact that the birds will certainly eat every cherry you plant unless you can protect them. There's a renaissance of cherry growing in southern England at the moment. It depends on dwarf trees being grown in large polytunnels from which birds can be excluded. There's a little untidy here. Should have had some glyphosate earlier, but this is these are Pear rootstocks. These are Quince A rootstock, Pear rootstocks, and these are Pear seedling Pear rootstocks. You can see what thorny things they are. Ooh, watch out for these. These are going to be grafted to pears, and those probably to Quince. And these are some of the these are the 106 rootstocks that I grafted this year. So thanks to the friends who sent me different varieties. You can see there's a stock there. Darcy Spice. We're looking forward to having this. It's a wonderful old variety of Essex, I think. Yeah, several Darcy Spice here. I'm going to grow those on. As a Gloucester I was sent. There's a few others. There's one here called Burlesque. Brown leaves russet as well. We used to have brown leaves russet on a Cordon. This is Landula's preparing to put the garlic in. The garlic should have gone in earlier. It's in one of those years, you know. Just, you can't do everything, and if you bite off too much, you may have to have some difficulty with it. Anyway, I'm just going to finally walk down to the through the last section, which is not quite true. The cider orchard section is the main cider section is over that way. And in fact, I've often said, can you walk around and show us everything? This is the main sort of ride between the two sections. There are 6 rows that side, 6 rows that side, but this central aisle is wider. Hello, cat. That cat eats mice, it also eats baby birds. They're easier to catch. Planted hedgerows, loads of baby birds in them. Cat comes in. Anyway, this is the place where I removed every other tree, as I mentioned earlier. Originally we planted some of these trees far too close together. You know, if your trees need 15 feet apart, then if you give them 15 feet apart, early on it'll look like you're wasting space. Later on it'll be perfect. If they need 15 feet apart and you give them 10 feet apart, it'll look great for the first 5 or 6 years. Then it will look terrible, and you'll end up having to do what I've done, cut every one of them out, every other one out, and then they'll have 20 feet apart instead of the 15 that they needed. Having said that, this is a very difficult calculation to make, because here, these trees here, They're the same variety, on the same rootstock, and they were planted the same day, and they've been treated in the same way in every respect. The soil at this end of this really quite short piece of land is significantly poorer than at that end. What can you say? Live and learn. It was a difficult year, I tell you, it was a difficult year. Here's some prunings, wood I cut last year, piled it up. That will, waste not, want not. You could pile all this up and just burn it. But I piled it up carefully and dried it out, and now this is great for barbecues or kindling. These obviously are the poplars, and beyond the poplars is the copse. I can see them, but I can't identify them to you. The seedling Perry pears that I planted down here, I was going to graft them and move them, but then I forgot, and then they were too big to move, so I'm leaving them there just to grow into noble trees to make perhaps timber, veneer, top end knife handles one day, perhaps. They'll grow for 100 years or more. So this is a triple row, 1, 2, 3 rows so far, Lord Lambourne. It's a pretty reliable tree, but it didn't do very well for us last year because, again, of the horrible weather. This doesn't need a lot of looking after. You see, I haven't pruned this yet, and it doesn't need a fantastic amount of pruning. It's quite a natural, open sort of tree. It doesn't need an awful lot done. It's Julia's art studio. And gap in the hedge, bottom end of the cider orchard. As you walk around, you notice things like this that have been broken. You really want to walk around with a notebook so you can make notes. And here's our other outdoor toilet, which is just a pit, frankly, with just a crouch pit. Yeah, it does the job. What do you think Moses and the Israelites did in the desert? Just while we're down here, I'm going to have a look at the big old Perry pears. Hey, this is the longest walk I've ever done, probably the longest video I've ever made. I think we must be up to about 18 minutes by now. I'm not looking at a watch, I'm just guessing. Chestnut. Here's 3 Perry pears. 1, 2, 3. These are seedling Pear rootstocks, and I planted these in I think it was 1993 or 1994. I was going to graft them and plant them up there, but I never did. It was down here, we didn't have all these other trees. Now, so basically they're growing like forest, they're growing like woodland trees. I've crown lifted them, by which I mean I've cut out side branches progressively year after year. I might just, the lowest branches are coming out now at about 8.5, 9 feet up. I may just go out there and saw those out, but frankly, if I do it, I'm actually more likely to use an extension saw, because I really don't want to take the chance of hurting myself again. This is a Perry pear. This is a variety called Butt. And again, this is about 18, 20 years old. This is not a good place for it to be. I had even wondered about cutting all the trees down around it in order for it to be given some more light. But it just would be a little bit of a vandalistic act. It's never really, I'd have to cut all of this lot down in order to get this enough daylight. I don't know if you can see, but this area down here is sunken. The height here is, I'm actually about 8 feet lower than the orchard down here. We planted this area up with various woodland trees, including willow for baskets, willow and hazel for baskets. Because, we only ever wanted about 2 acres of land. But, we kept seeing 2 acres of land for 40 or 50,000 pounds, and then when this 9 acres came up for 35,000, we bought it. To this area down here we planted up with various trees like this silver birch. Look at this. Now, would you believe me, if you didn't know I was a very trustworthy person, if I told you that this was planted in the winter of 1992-93, 20 years ago. This tree's 20 years old. And when it arrived, it came through the post. It was about that big. Something that big came through the post, about 70 pence each. There's some more. These are white willow, Salix alba, and I planted these for the specific purpose of making trug baskets. Your baskets made from, you can make them from various woods, but willow is the key one that's used. You basically cut them down and slice them lengthways, split them, and weave them, soak them, and put them around frames and make them into. Yeah, it looks like it. I'm talking to myself here. But anyway, so 20 years ago I planted these, and this, by the way, is an argument in favour of property ownership, if not capitalism as such. I planted these 20 years ago in order to make trug baskets when I retired. Anyway, I'm retiring the week after next. Hi, just a brief introduction. This is the longest video I've ever uploaded by a very big margin. It's 32 minutes. So if you're just passing through here, you probably don't want to watch this. It's a walk through pretty much the whole of the orchard, testing out my new GoPro camera. I've reduced it from HD because it was a 2.8 gigabyte, which is just silly. I haven't got the hang of this yet. But I can't go out and take that film again, so it's just a film for some people I know were interested in this, of me spending half an hour wandering through the whole of the orchard, having a look at trees, not actually really doing any pruning, but just having a think about what the trees look like, what needs to be done, plan my work over the winter, and I wander down into the copse at the end and finish up having a look at some of the fine old noble trees, the birch and the big seedling pear and the white willow. What I'm going to do, this is not really pruning instruction, this is just a look at the orchard. I'm going to, over the winter, I'm planning to do a number of videos, and I will try to keep them to less than 5 minutes each, looking at each of the individual sorts of apple tree and pear tree and plum, the young trees, the ones that are 2 or 3 years old, the ones that are 20 years old, and to do specific detailed pruning videos on each of the trees. If you want to watch those, then you might want to hold out for them, but if you're actually one of the certain number of people I do know are out there, and thank you all, who are genuinely interested in what's going on in the orchard, then you might want to sit and watch through this. But hey, I won't be offended if nobody wants to bother. See you later.